Happy spooky season! It is the end of October. Well, technically it's now November, but this is my October wrap up. And to complete the Halloweeny mood, I have dressed up like a very lazy cat, but I look cute, and that's the important thing. And I wanted to show you my pen pal knitted this pumpkin. Look at it. Look at him. He's so cute. Okay, anyway, on to the books. I read quite a few books, so I'll try to keep it going, keep it fast, and I'll go through these in alphabetical order by title, as per usual. Starting with Ace of Spades by Farida Abike-Yamide, and this is a YA dark academia book set in a posh school. So the author is British, but this is set in an American school. And I have never heard of American schools, even really fancy private schools, having prefects, so I don't know what that's about. However, the rest of it was really, really good. That's like my one criticism of it. So this is about two black students at this otherwise all-white fancy high school, and they're in their senior year. They're looking forward to sort of their lives coming together, moving on to college, and looking forward to their careers. However, then they are targeted by an anonymous texter known as Aces, who sort of airs their dirty secrets and threatens to put their hard work towards their careers in jeopardy. And it had a little bit of a slow start, but I really liked the setup of it. I think the slow start worked really well for this book, and then almost like when the slow start was over, then the ball really got rolling, and it was very dramatic and lots of things happened. The writing is great. I really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to anything else that she might write in the future. And then I read Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Tales from the Cafe. This is the sequel to Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and it's another 450-page stories or so. This book is, I think, 200-ish pages. I read it in one sitting. It was great. I waited too long to read this, I think, after I read the first one. And I'm only sad that I waited so long to read it, but it was great. I loved it. Very heartwarming, very touching. So this is about a cafe where if you sit in a particular seat, you can travel in time, but only to that cafe in other times. So we follow 4 different people who want to time travel to relive an experience or talk to someone who's passed one last time, etc. And this time we get a little bit more background into the people that work in this cafe, which is also just like an interesting little garnish, because of course the same people showed up in the first book, but now we get a little bit more about them. And then I also read Bitter Falls by Rachel Kane. This is the 4th book in the Stillhouse Lake trilogy. I also read Wolf Hunter River, which is the 3rd book this year. I read the first 2 books in September, 3rd and 4th books this month. Last month, in October, whatever. Time means nothing. And I think there's a 5th book, but I can't find it anywhere. Like, it's not on my library app, it's not on Scribd. I can't find it on Audible. Because I read all these in Audible format, I don't want to change the format to read the last book. I like consistency in all things, so it has to be an audiobook. But these were both good. I thought Wolf Hunter River was okay, but then Bitter Falls was back up to like 4-star good level. So Wolf Hunter River is the same family, Gwen and her 2 children from the first book. And this time, instead of looking for her ex-husband's serial killer, in Wolf Hunter River, what happens there? Oh yeah, she gets a call from a distraught woman who says they are out to get her, but Gwen can't get her to say who they is or what she's done to make them get her or whatever. This woman is then murdered, and her daughter calls Gwen again and says they've got my mom, and she's like, who, what? But then the police show up, arrest the teenage daughter, because they're like, well, obviously this teenager is murderous. She sometimes does drugs. And so then Gwen and the fam go to this creepy little town, Wolf Hunter River, to try to figure out what actually happens, who they is, and what's going on. And then the subsequent book, Bitter Falls, is Gwen starts investigating the strange disappearance of this person. The man's mother calls her and she's like, mother to mother, can you help me out here? This sucks. And so Gwen is like, sure, okay. And then she tries to infiltrate a creepy cult, and it is a very creepy cult. So props to Rachel Caine for coming up with such disturbing storylines. It's honestly very impressive and also worrying. Rachel, are you okay? Then I read City of Dragons. Okay, this is first alphabetically, but City of Dragons is the third book in the Rain Wild Chronicles series within the series of The Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. So I read the first 3 books in that, and that's Dragon Keeper, Dragon Haven, and City of Dragons. And through all of this, I don't want to explain it too much because it might spoil the other previous smaller series within the larger series of The Realm of the Elderlings. But essentially, this is the story of dragons returning to the Realm of the Elderlings, and possibly also the return of Elderlings, possibly, maybe, question mark. So there are some dragons, they're pretty weak, they want to find their ancestral homeland, and so a city in the Rain Wilds gathers together a bunch of teenagers they don't really want anymore, and they're like, this is a drain on our economy, go keep dragons, probably die, whatever. And then this is the journey upriver. It's an adventure story. There's a lot happening. They have great characters. The dragons are great characters, very interesting. And there's also a lot of like politics in this. And it's very well done. Robin Hobb is a masterful writer, and her world building and characters are also really great. So read this whole series. It's a bit of a commitment. They're long books, but worth it, I think. Then I read Come Closer by Sarah Gran. This is a horror novella about a woman who is possessed by the demon Nama, and her life sort of goes downhill. And it's suitably creepy. I was very upset. It's a bit of a bummer because this woman's life like unravels because she's possessed. But well written, good characters, would recommend. Then I read Daddy Issues by Catherine Angel. This is a pretty short, like long personal essay, and my friend gave this to me for my birthday. My birthday was in March, so it was time to read this, especially because it was so short. So I picked this up. Glad I did. It was really good. It was very thoughtful. It is about sort of the way fathers are depicted in media, and famous people who are fathers, and fathers in fiction, and how fathers can be a supportive figure in people's lives, especially in women's lives, are sometimes really destructive. So, I mean, a little bit of a bummer, but really well written and thoughtful. Another bummer, I read Medical Bondage, Race, Gender, and the Origins of American Gynecology by Deirdre Cooper Owens. And yeah, I mean, it's what it says on the cover. It's a nonfiction book about looking at the origins of the gynecological field, and how a lot of the doctors that started looking into gynecological problems just sort of experimented on Black enslaved women with no anesthesia, and of course also no informed consent or any consent. I know, like, in the medical field, informed consent is a relatively recent thing, unfortunately. So this is much further back in time from that, and horrifying is really the only word I can use for that. And I did write a dedicated review on this on my website, so I will put that link in the description box so you can read it in full. And then I read On Cats by Charles Bukowski. This was for my cat book club. This year we're reading books about cats, and it sucked. I hated this book. It's mercifully short, so it only took me like 2 sittings to read this. the writing is like upsettingly bad. Joris Bukowski somehow sexualizes cats. Why? He has like several dedicated essays about hairy cat testicles. I cannot unread this book, and that makes me sad. The only reason I rated it 2 stars instead of just 1 was that when he talks about his own cats, the way he talks about them is crap. However, the cats seem like very good boys, and I can't take my anger on this book out on the cats. They don't deserve it. So the cats get a star. The rest of this book was trash. Don't read it. Decidedly not trash. I read Queenie by Candace Carty Williams, and it was amazing. This is a 5-star read for me. I loved it so much. And I'm, again, only sorry that it took me this long to read it, because I've had it on Kindle since it came out. I was so excited to read it, and I did it. It's a bit like a Bridget Jones sort of like funny woman in publishing has a messy life, but it's also, it has a lot of darker themes in it. Like the main character, Queenie, she is sort of dating around, and she finds that a lot of people sexualize her body for, you know, being a Black woman. And so it's like her trying to navigate that with her friends. She tries to sort of integrate her friend group, and some of her friends are Black, some of her friends are white. And so there's, I don't want to say culture clash, growing pains. The way they interact is interesting and telling, and sometimes like the friends behave well and are really supportive to Queenie, and sometimes they aren't. So really well written, great characters, great plot, great character development. Like Queenie's a bit of a mess, and I think she really grows in this book, and so do her friends, and I love that aspect of it. Another great book about friendship, Redemptor by Jordan E. Fueko. This is the sequel to Ray Bear, which I read last year. I can't say much about this because then it would spoil Ray Bear, but essentially in Ray Bear, the main character, Tarisai, is raised by this woman called the Lady, who is cold, distant, and also wants Tarisai to kill the crown prince. So already a complicated start. Tarisai travels to the capital to become the crown prince's, possibly like one of his trusted, not servants, but like counsel, I guess. And so like they're bonded from childhood, and so she really likes the crown prince, and she doesn't want to kill her new friend, but she is also compelled by the Lady to kill him. And so she has like a really great internal battle. There's also an external battle, and the great themes and dramatic storyline continue in Redemptor. And the covers are also just really beautiful. It took me so long to realize, but in Ray Bear and Redemptor, all the like leaves make a face. When I noticed that, it was like mind-blowing brain explosion. Then I read Ring Shout by P. Dilley Clark, and I also loved it. This is another horror novella. This is about, when I first read it, on like the back of the cover, I thought the main character's name was Marcy, but I read the audiobook, and the audiobook says Maurice. So I'm guessing that is the correct way to say it. So this is about Maurice and her 2 friends. I think it's 2 friends, maybe it's 3 friends. And they are monster hunters because the Ku Klux Klan has resurged in the 1920s, and it's mostly made of humans, but there are some monsters under the white sheets who are sort of orchestrating, feeding on the humans' hate. So Maurice and her friends hunt the monsters while also trying to escape racist humans. And this was great as a horror novella, great as a fantasy, great as a historical, like a piece of historical fiction, and also great for social commentary, both of the society of the 1920s and how the real history of the 1920s Klan has affected today. So all around great characters, great writing. I can't recommend this book enough. Then I read The Flames of Albion by Jean Menzies. This is a dragon fantasy book set in a fantasy world where there is a democratically elected government, which I think is an interesting change from, I think, most like historical fantasy worlds. And this is also like a very hopeful story, and has a really cute, great lesbian romance at the center, and of course has a dragon who hatches in the very beginning. She hatches and chooses the main character, Adaria, to be her human. And so then, because she's the only dragon, I think, still alive. I think dragons have disappeared from the world. There was this egg. Now dragons are back, kind of thing. Now that this dragon has emerged again, there's a lot of like political, not gesturing, discussions, negotiations of what that means for the country going forward. And so it's an adventure story, a politics story, a romance story, and like a fun fantasy adventure story. And I really liked it. Then I read The Girl with the Louding Voice by Abby Dare, and I thought this was going to be like a trauma porn story, because all of the descriptions I have seen of it by other people are that it's just like a heartbreaking, sad, not hopeful story at all. And I think it's the opposite. I find the general arc of it to be very hopeful. I think it's sort of a modern, darker Anne of Green Gables type of story. Like, there is abuse in this. There are definitely dark elements to it, but essentially this is about the main character, Adini, who gets pushed into a marriage, I think when she's 14, and she's the third wife of this guy who isn't great, and she tries to befriend the more senior wives and sort of is more successful with one than the other, but she's not happy in this life. So she tries to escape to go to the big city to try to get herself an education, and she does. So she is working in this house of this married couple who are also not great, and but she befriends another person who is able to help her try to get a scholarship for this education, because she wants to use her louding voice and be heard. She doesn't want to be like silent and subservient. So yeah, like I said, there's abuse from first her husband and then like the couple whose house she works in. They are abusive to her, and they are all like one of them is abusive to the other partner. And so like it's definitely not like happiness all the time, but it's not the tale of despair that I was led to believe this was. So I was very happy that this was an overall hopeful narrative. I also read it in one sitting, and like it's a 300-ish page book. It's not huge, but it's also not short, but it's really well written, easy to read. Then I read The Ladies of the Secret Circus by Constance Sayers, and I was a little bit disappointed. I rated it 3 stars. Like, it wasn't bad. I think it's a little bit too long. This is another one that I wrote a whole review on, so I will put it in the description. But I was expecting it to be sort of night circusy in an ethereal, magical way, and it wasn't. I really liked the first few chapters, and then the story kind of like stretches a little bit too long, and I really wish that the author had really dedicated herself more to magical stuff in the story, because there's like a few hints in the beginning and then nothing for a really long time, and then like the main character Lara actually makes it to the secret circus, and then it's like what bunch of magic, and then I had forgotten that this was a fantasy book, and then like all the magic starts happening. I was like, wait a minute, what's happening? And then I had to remember that it was in fact a fantasy book, and yeah, there was magic in it. And a detail that haunts me from this book is that there's a monkey that is the reincarnation of the soul of Benito Mussolini. I didn't like that. I don't think it was very believable. I know it's magical, but I just looked at it and went, I don't know. So yeah, a bit of a disappointment. Like, the writing is good. I just think there could have been some better editing, and no Mussolini monkey. Then I read The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, and this is another horror novella, and I really enjoyed it. I have been meaning to read it for a while. It's been on my radar, and then I thought, since it is October, spooky season, I would read it. And I was not disappointed. I really liked it. I was a little bit confused because there were a lot of characters and not a lot of setup. Like, you just get thrown into their lives, and like, it took me a while to figure out who was who, how they were related, and how the haunting was affecting them and why. But once I figured it out, it was great. Like, I'm not criticizing that there isn't a lot of like setup and exposition. I actually really liked that. It just took me a while to get who was who. And the other thing, I don't want to spoil it. It took me a little bit to sort of understand what entity was haunting them. Like, you figure it out pretty soon, but like, just knowing that, I was like, this is an interesting entity. How is that working? But then there is like more exposition as you go along, and by the end I was like, yeah, okay, this totally makes sense. So great stuff. Read it. Then I read The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodore Goss. This is the first in a series. I think it's a trilogy. And it takes a bunch of characters from sort of classic horror literature, puts them all together, and they have an adventure. And I liked it, but I didn't love it. I'll read the rest of the series, but I wasn't completely enamored of it. Then I read The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. This is ostensibly an audiobook because I did listen to it, but Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction had made a few videos this October of her reading creepy horror stories, and Ashley has a really nice voice. So listen to this. I will definitely listen to the other ones. I think they're a little bit longer, but I'll do that. So yeah, I've been aware of The Telltale Heart. I'm not sure if I've ever read it all the way through, but I liked it. It was good. Also good, The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. This is another one that had a little bit of a slow start, but I think the setup was worth it. This is about a girl, Emmanuelle. She lives in this place called Bethel, and it is a very puritanical, culty vibes town. And so it's very patriarchal, and her mother had died. Yeah, her mother has died in semi-disgrace, and her father was executed. And an accident pushes her into this place called the Darkwood that everyone's sort of like forbidden to go to because it's haunted by Lilith and some other demons. And so she goes in, these demons are like, oh, hello, we've been waiting for you. Here's this diary. It was your mom's. And she's like, huh? And she takes this diary back. She starts reading it, and she figures out that her mom was a witch back in the day, and that there is a curse on the town that she wants to try to reverse. So she has a best friend called Leah and another friend called Ezra, and they, all three of them, sort of get entangled with the town's patriarch, the prophet, and his many wives. And so there are a lot of upsetting parts to this story. Like, the prophet has, it seems, a habit of being a child rapist, which is, so if you don't want to read about that, it doesn't go into a lot of detail. It doesn't linger on this, but just so you're aware, that's in there. And so yeah, the three of them try their best to try to reverse this curse, and it is suitably dramatic. There were a lot of surprises along the way, and I really, really enjoyed this book. And then I read White is for Witching by Helen Oyemi, and this is another sort of haunted, witchy book. It's about a girl that grows up in this house in Dover, and the house is sentient, and then she goes to university, and then she has to come back because like the house is unwilling to let her go. And so like the characters are really well written in this. The way it's written is also really interesting. Let's see if I can find you an example. But there are parts of this story where the last word of one sentence is also the first word of the next sentence. And it's sort of written like this. So there is the last sentence, but it's also the first sentence of the next paragraph. And I thought that was a really great way to sort of tie everything together. I thought it was written really cleverly. I really enjoy Helen Oyami's writing style. And yeah, I'm not sure if I would read this again. It's not like a new favorite. However, it was really solid and I enjoyed it. So that is last alphabetically on this list. So I will take you through some stats and then we can all move on with their lives. So I read a total of 22 books with a total of 6,882 pages and an average rating of 81%. So a pretty good reading month. October was pretty solid. I'm hoping to take this energy into the rest of the year with me so I can finish out strong. So that's it. Thank you for watching and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.